As amazing as his recent PNATs was, one of the questions people had was, where is Bob Matthews? The answer is we don't really know, and in fact, weirdly enough, this isn't the first time something like this has happened, where an elite level best in the world powerlifter just completely goes missing and disappears off the face of the earth. I'm not just talking disappears from the sport, I'm talking no one's heard from them, no one knows what they're doing or where they are. And that's happened before with Chance Mitchell. And let me tell you, the similarities between the two of them are kind of uncanny. They're both American athletes who straight up disappeared after winning Worlds and before being able to go to Sheffield. And they're both also sponsored by the same company, being Stoic. Now, coincidence? Probably, but interesting to note. So let's go through the story of the mysterious disappearing elite powerlifters. Starting with, as I mentioned, Chance Mitchell. Now, a lot of the newer powerlifting fans who got into the sport in the last couple of years probably aren't going to remember Chance Mitchell because, well, you have no reason to, because post-2022, this guy has disappeared, not just from powerlifting, but from social media, from everything. But he was the 2022 world champion in the 93 kilo class with the following lifts. So he had a 315 kilo squat. This was a crazy battle against the likes of Jonathan Kaiko, Gustav Hedlund, Gavin Aiden, Emil Krastev. We're talking best of the best now. Chance Mitchell beat them all this year, or in the 2022. He hit this 190 kilo bench, and his best lift by far was his world record deadlift of 373.5 to lock up a then world record kilo total of 878.5 and the win. And you can see how efficient that deadlift is. So as I mentioned, that 878.5 that he won worlds with that year, he defeated, like I said, a who's who of 93 powerlifters. I'm talking Jonathan Kaiko, Emil Krastev, Gustav Hedlund, Gavin Aiden, guys who have gone on to win worlds, set world records, win Sheffields in the years since. That's how promising Chance Mitchell was. And the 878.5 was an IPF world record at the time in the 93s. That stood for just under a year until it was beaten by Gavin Aiden and Jonathan Kaiko at Sheffield. The deadlift was also a world record, and in fact, his deadlift world records still stand. So that 373.5 that I just showed you, that is still the IPF world record in the 93s, and the overall heaviest deadlift ever done in the 93s by a tested lifter also belongs to Chance Mitchell with this 383 kilo pull at 2022 PNATs, where he finished second behind Jonathan Kaiko. Now, slightly dodgy, I will say, potentially a bit of up-down motion. I'm not here to argue this lift, but it was given 3 white lights, so the record stands. But that is still, to this day, the heaviest deadlift ever done by a 93. So Chance Mitchell still holds the IPF and overall 93 kilo deadlift world records, and it has stood now for over 3 years, or going on 3 years now. We saw Brandon Petrie come close to beating this at PNATs on his third pull for the win. We saw Demetrius Smith attempt just half a kilo below this in his pull for podium, however both lifters missed. And yeah, there are some monster deadlifters amongst the American 93s, but Chance Mitchell, make no mistake about it, was the best of the best, especially for back then in the day. I mean, it's taken 3 years for people to start coming close to attempting to break his world record. And 3 years in powerlifting terms is a long time. That's a quarter of the lifespan of the sport almost, which essentially started in 2012. So what happened to Chance Mitchell? Well, being the 2022 world champion, he was invited to the inaugural Sheffield in 2023, and I believe the last post I saw from him on his Instagram, it is now deleted, so I can't go back and check, but the last post I remember seeing from him was him posting a pretty standard training session leading into Sheffield. So he was in Sheffield prep, he was training, but that is the last we've heard from Chance Mitchell, and I am not sure what the circumstances exactly were, but he did not go to Sheffield. Jonathan Kaiko went in his place, as well as Gavin Aiden with a wildcard spot, and we all know, how legendary that battle ended up being. But Chance Mitchell never showed up to Sheffield, and we assumed, okay, needs a bit of a break. Maybe he's injured. Maybe we'll come back next year. Or hell, Jonathan Kaiko just took a year off lifting, and he came back stronger than ever to win PA Nats. But Chance Mitchell, after Sheffield, we didn't see him come back. We saw him disappear even further to the point where he deleted his social media presence, and I am not aware of anyone having reached out to him. I've heard some rumors that he's been in talks with some people, and he's still he's saying he's okay. He just needs a bit of a break from the sport. He needs his own time, whatever. Fair enough, I guess. I've heard rumors that there are some Chance Mitchell sightings at some gyms at 4 a.m. in the morning or something ridiculous. I don't know how true those are, but yeah, in mysterious circumstances, Chance Mitchell, who was arguably one of the best lifters in the world at the time, world champion, world record holder, we're talking the best of the best, just completely disappeared from the sport. And I mentioned the Jonathan Kaiko example. It was a bit different because Jonathan Kaiko didn't just disappear and delete his social media. He was still doing seminars, he was still posting, he was still very much active in the community. He just sort of took a step back from competing, and like I said, came back stronger than ever at this PA Nats. It obviously worked for him. What Chance Mitchell is doing is a whole nother thing. I mean, maybe he's taken a 3-year-long break to come back. I don't know, but it is a real shame that Chance Mitchell disappeared from the sport, because as stacked as the American 93s are, we're still missing arguably the best of the lot. Like I said, the guys he beat at those worlds, you have Gustav, who went on to win Sheffield and set IPF world records, Emil Krastev, who is the current IPF world record holder, Jonathan Kaiko, who's won worlds since and set world records, Gavin Naden, who's set an IPF world record since. So yeah, Chance Mitchell, the things he could have done had he have stayed. One of the biggest what ifs in powerlifting, one of the biggest mysteries in powerlifting. Where the hell is Chance Mitchell? And that brings us to Bobb Matthews, because we're starting to see almost a similar thing happening, and I sure hope this is not gonna go, the story of Bobb Matthews is not gonna go down the same route as the story of Chance Mitchell, because that would be a real shame. But Bobb Matthews won the 120 kilo weight class IPF World Championships last year in Lithuania via the following lifts. He hit a 970 total, this 352.5 kilo squat. Now, the notable thing is, 237.5 bench right there. The notable thing is he actually did this with, I guess, a reverse weight cut in an era where lifters are cutting down, as his 380 deadlift to lock up the 970 total. In an era where lifters are cutting down to maximize their advantage, Bobb Matthews did the opposite, and he bulked up, and he literally had to waterload to to weigh in above the minimum threshold, which was 105. He literally had to chug some Gatorade to make weight on the minimum end, which is super rare. It's usually the opposite. And he literally weighed in at a smidge over 105 to be able to compete in the 120s. And he said, don't get clapped by 105. Boy, did they get clapped by 105, because he dominated. 970 was only 8.5 kilos below the IPF world record, which still stands. And he wiped the floor with everyone and became the world champion, essentially being, let's be real, he was a 105 lifter. He was a 105 lifter through and through, and he beat the weight class above. Crazy, crazy strength and impressiveness. That's why, despite this not being a world record, I mean, this would have been a world record in the 105s easily. The IPF world record is 940. It was 940 at the time. 940.5 is where it currently stands. So this would have been 30 kilos above the IPF 105 world record. So yeah, Bobb Matthews, definitely one of the best lifters in the world, and he was recognized as one of the outliers in powerlifting unanimously, and put in the same conversations as guys like Austin Perkins, Jesus Alvarez, Rondell Hunt, as being the best of the best. He, instead of lifting as a 105, which he essentially was, he committed to bulking to face Rondell Hunt, being the 120 kilo uncrowned king, 1045 kilo total. Unfortunately, couldn't lift IPF because of crappy political reasons, which I've made separate videos of. If you're interested in seeing those, links in the description. But Bobb Matthews wanted the challenge. Rather than easily beating the 105s, he decided, he's going to bulk up and face Rondell Hunt, who was head and shoulders above all the other 120s in the world. So he did, and the best training total, he's put together some ridiculous training totals. I'm talking like 1,000 kilo doubles, triples with just over 1,000 kilos. Absolutely crazy. But he put together this 1,020 kilo gym total at a body weight of 109. I believe this was done at the start of this year in January, so this was pretty recent. Huge 370 squat, 250 bench. I mean, these numbers are crazy. This is only 25 kilos below Rondell's best ever performance at a meet. Obviously, these are all gym lifts that are damn near maximal, absolute grinders. And I don't know if he would be able to put this all together on a single competition day. However, still working on filling out that weight class, and 1,020 is absolutely monstrous. Like I said, 940 is the IPF world record as a 105. If you want to think what the biggest lifts ever done, or the heaviest total done by 105 period, that would be 960.5 by Ashton Roos. Actually, that would be 979 by Anthony McNaughton, done at PA Nats. Which is the other thing. Anthony McNaughton, being such a dominant 105 now that has emerged, with his 979 performance at PA Nats, everyone is saying the only person that can challenge me 105 would have been Bobb had he decided to cut down or just lift as 105 instead of a 120. And I agree with that. Anthony McNaughton wipes the floor with every 105 on planet Earth, aside from Bobb, if Bobb decides to drop down. But he was clearly getting crazy, crazy strong, bulking to face Rondell, and that was one of the most hyped, still is one of the most hyped showdowns in powerlifting today. Unfortunately, we haven't seen it yet, but hopefully we will. Similar to Chance Mitchell, Bobb Matthews obviously got an invite to 2025 Sheffield on account of his world's winning performance. However, he declined. Now, to be fair, he didn't exactly vanish off the face of the earth suddenly like Chance Mitchell did. He was still very much active. He was doing podcasts, doing YouTube videos and all that stuff still. But the reason he decided against Sheffield, from what he said, I kind of struggled to follow his logic, but obviously not being an SPD sponsored athlete, felt disrespected, didn't want to go out, on his own dime, which I guess fair enough. But at the same time, dude, you're in serious contention to win, or at least place podium at the most prestigious stage in powerlifting, and you're going to pass that opportunity up, really? I don't know. To me, that seemed weird. But the other reason, I guess, was he didn't want to cut down to 105. He wanted to continue the bulk to face Rondell. Again, fair enough. However, if he had gone as a 120, he still likely would have podiumed, because the 120 world record is 978.5, which he himself has hit at PA Nats 2024. And like I said, his training total of 1,020, that would have still placed him second behind Shell at Sheffield, I'm pretty sure, if he would have lifted as a 120 or a 105. So, yeah, I don't see why he would have passed up Sheffield, but anyway, he did. But at least he explained it, so it wasn't as mysterious. Then PA Nats rolls around. We're all assuming he's going to do it, because why the hell wouldn't he? And Rondell Hunt, about a month or 5 weeks out from PA Nats, makes the announcement he's going to be lifting as a guest lifter, which is huge, because for a split second there, we thought we were going to get to see the Bobb v Rondell showdown that has been hyped up for so long. Arguably the most hyped up showdown in powerlifting today that you can make. We thought we were going to see it, until we realized that Bobb Matthews' name was not on the nominations list. And everyone was like, what the hell's going on there? And it turned out that Bobb passed up on doing PA Nats as well this year, for reasons that I do not know of. He hasn't made an announcement, and this is where he kind of disappeared. He's gone, absolutely quiet on social media. He hasn't been uploading YouTube videos or Instagram or anything. I haven't heard anything from him. Similar to Chance Mitchell, he hasn't gone so far as to wipe his accounts yet, which hopefully he won't. But he is, we haven't seen him post anything for a couple of months now, and we haven't heard from him. So he decided not to do PA Nats, which, from what I've heard, I believe he reached out to Rondell personally to let him know. I believe maybe some injuries he was dealing with or whatever, which I guess, again, fair enough. So it's kind of unfortunate we didn't get to see that showdown, and we saw Rondell easily be the strongest 120 on the day, despite not technically winning because he was a guest lifter. But then Bobb not doing PA Nats means that he's also not going to be doing Worlds, because he didn't go to Sheffield, he didn't go to PA Nats, so he does not have a qualifying total to qualify for Worlds. So that's it. We're not going to see Bobb at Worlds either. So it's like, what are you doing? Like, the whole point of him supposedly missing out on Sheffield was so he would continue his bulk to 120 to face Rondell rather than try and cut to 105. Like I said, he still would have been a very successful 120 lifter at Sheffield. But if the whole point was to face Rondell, why would you not do PA Nats? Again, I understand, likely he was injured, not in the best physical shape, didn't want to have the best matchup of his career, of any powerlifting career potentially, when he's not at 100%. That's fair enough, I can understand. But still, you're now foregoing a full year of your competitive prime, not lifting at Sheffield, Nationals, and Worlds, to do what exactly? I'm not sure. So yeah, again, we haven't heard from Bobb for a while now. He hasn't been, on the scene, so to speak, on any of his social media. So we have no idea what's happening. If anyone does, shed some light on it in the comments, that would be cool. But hopefully this doesn't turn into a Chance Mitchell situation, because like I said, some of the similarities are, kind of uncanny. We go from world champion, borderline best in the world, to disappearing before Sheffield, never to be seen again. That's kind of what we saw from both athletes. And also they're sponsored by the same Stoic company, who I can only really think of those two lifters as the only lifters that Stoic sponsors. Again, probably coincidence. I'm not saying that there's something nefarious going on, but a coincidence worth pointing out nonetheless, I think anyway. So what's next for Bobb Matthews? Well, he's qualified for World Games on account of his Worlds performance, which is going to be held after Worlds this year, around August, I believe, in China. So presumably he's going to be doing that. I assume he will. But then again, I also assumed he would do Sheffield. I assumed he would do Nats. I assumed he would do Worlds. He didn't do either of those. So hopefully he's going to do World Games and not pull out of that as well. At this point, I wouldn't be surprised if he just takes the whole year off. Maybe he's doing a Jonathan Kaiko and wants a year to recharge. I don't know. He hasn't been through as many battles as Jonathan Kaiko had, so I don't see why that would be the case. But again, it is what it is. So yeah, he is a maybe for World Games, and it is a shame that we might miss out on seeing a full year of Bobb Matthews' prime, who is one of the best powerlifters walking planet Earth today, one of the strongest in the world, across all weight classes, pound for pound I'm talking. And yeah, hopefully it doesn't disappear. I mean, do I think he's going to pull a Chance Mitchell? I don't know. I mean, potentially two possibilities from here. He either does pull a Chance Mitchell and just fades into obscurity, which would be a real shame, or he's just locked himself in his basement with his weights and a year's worth of supply of quinoa, and next time we see him, he's going to be a filled out 120 with a gym total in the 1100s. That would be sick. Out of those two possibilities, I'm hoping it's the second one. And I think that's probably more likely as well. So yeah, hopefully we see Bobb Matthews back again soon. And hopefully we see that face off with him versus Rondell. But for now, this is the mysterious case of the disappearing world champion powerlifters.